So I often hear it come up around bosses in businesses feeling nervous about training up their staff further because they're worried that if they develop their team that they'll leave. What's your take on that? Is that something that you've seen and had to sort of talk people through?
Yes, a lot actually. And my question is always, well, what's the risk of if we don't develop them and then they stay? So, why don't we focus on developing, providing growth, and then why don't we focus on creating a culture within the workplace where our people want to stay and they want to grow, so they don't want to leave.
Are you feeling lost in your career, or you want to have a greater impact but you don't know where to start? Welcome to Kinda Planned, the podcast where we help you unlock the opportunities that you can't plan for. Through engaging conversations with expert guests, we help you unlock the mindsets, strategies and tools that you need to build the career of your dreams. So subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Alex Cuttiford, and let's take a moment to unlock your next opportunity. Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Kinda Planned. Lucky enough to have Kelly Vines on with me today, the HR consulting guru. So how are you, Kelly?
Really well, thank you, Alex. Thank you for asking. How are you going?
Really good. We've both rested up over the weekend and we thought we'd kick our Monday off with a great podcast chat, talking all things kids and friends' kids and how they keep us on our toes. Yeah, so I think we'll leave our weekends in the past though and dive into this chat. Do you maybe just want to share a bit about who you are, your career journey and what it is you do today?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career, I was 16 years old. I was working for a mailing house as a customer service officer. That was my first job, and I was with that role for about 6 years. I really built my confidence in that role. There was 5 owners and they were the directors of the business. So they really developed me and grew me a lot so that I was able to run production meetings and starting to work with my own clients. And then I moved from that into seminar coordination in the Sydney CBD. So I did that for a few years and then sort of fell into HR, actually, into human resources. So started my career in HR. It's been 23 years now. Started in a recruitment agency and then I studied HR and leadership. And then moved into a generalist role, so out of the recruitment focus and into a generalist HR role, and then gradually worked myself into a HR business partner role and now owner-director of Rain HR and the Wellness Soul Tribe, which focuses on women and professional women and retreats and things like that. And I guess what led me to this career and to get into HR was just this incredible person when I was in the recruitment and started in that recruitment agency. His name's Pat Digby and he was just incredible. He was one of those general managers that really inspired and encouraged you to grow and encouraged you that it was okay to step out of your comfort zone, and that was actually a really good thing. So he was a really inspirational leader, and he said to me, I think you should look at doing some training in HR and leadership because I can see you've got a real gift in that space and supporting people and supporting businesses. So I decided to give it a go, and here I am.
Awesome. Yeah, you always need that person that just gives that nudge and helps you see what everyone else can see in yourself, but maybe you're not
Absolutely.
seeing yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
He just knew. And it was, I've been doing HR ever since.
Yeah, nice. Interesting. So you said seminar coordination. What was that role? What's that?
So that role I was looking after, it was an IT company and they did a lot of training on like Cisco systems and things like that. So we had presenters that would train, and basically there was Sydney, Melbourne, and Queensland, and then I would look after everything from the beginning of the seminar to the end. So I would support the lecturers with updating their content, and then I would also print out all the workbooks and send all the workbooks to the venues. I would organise the venues, I'd organise the flights for the lecturers, accommodation, food, so literally everything. for the Sydney ones, I would open the seminar. So I'd be down and making sure that the room was set up and everything was sort of ready to go, and booking people in as they arrived. So just greeting them and things like that. And then at the end as well, so wrapping it up and then sending out the surveys and looking at all the survey results around how we can do things better. So it was a really fun role. And I did that for a few years as well.
Yeah, nice. That would be a really good way to sort of really learn the ins and outs of that process, and because it feeds into so many aspects of HR ultimately, doesn't it?
It does. And it's that piece around coordination and communication and how important that was. Because if I wasn't communicating with the participants plus the lecturers, then I had to make sure that, and the events and the venues, so everything had to be very well structured, very aligned, so that everything just flowed smoothly. So the processes that I created and everything was just, really, just making sure that workflow was right.
Yeah.
Which was
So
good.
I really want to dive into the conversation around engagement and employee engagement. I've been reading the Gallup report, and it was talking about how, so in 2024 there was employee engagement declined to 21%, which was sort of down year on year, and the highest portion of drop was from managers. And so it was just an interesting space when you think about employee engagement. And then obviously HR sort of plays a strong role in how we actually help our employees feel engaged at work. So
Absolutely.
what do you see are the challenges in that space?
Well, I think when you're looking at engagement and when organisations are doing the engagement surveys, so the Net Promoter Score engagement, which is basically the one question. So would our employees recommend our teams to work here? And then it's rated generally from 1 to 10 on whether they would do that or not. And then that's how you'd get your percentage of your Net Promoter Score. So in relation to, I guess, the what I've seen in my experience around, like, with leaders and with the poor engagement, it's often that leaders, being a leader, you don't need to know everything. And I think being vulnerable and sharing with the team as well, like being your authentic self and drawing on your team as well, asking them questions for if you don't know the answer and letting them know. So just being honest, because if a leader listens, if a leader is asking for feedback and asking their team, how can I do better? And also themselves, like, how do I do better as a leader? And how can I serve my team? How can I support my team better? And what do I need support with as a leader as well to continually learn? That will go such a long way. And, your team, that'll let your team know that you're human, that they can approach you and that you have the exact same thoughts and you don't know everything like they don't. So being honest and being authentic will just really help to enable you to be approachable and to enable your team to come and work things out together and achieve things together. So problem solve those things. So that would be one of the key things that I've seen. And some also, I guess, that result as a leader of making sure that you provide your team with clarity and purpose around what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's more than a position description. It's around everything. So what are our company values? What do we stand for? What's the vision? And really, bringing that into your conversations every day. So you're creating that culture and you're living that culture every day.
It's interesting when like asking for that feedback and where I think often that falls out. So leaders will hear, oh yeah, we need to get feedback. But then where it falls down is actually taking hold of that feedback and actioning it. And I think that's where you can really burn the trust, is once you know that they're asking for feedback, but they just always have a response back to you as to why that's invalid or that, oh no, we can't do that every single time. It's sort of like you've really shot yourself in the foot at that point, I feel, is so once you've asked for feedback and shown that you're not going to take action with it, is like, how do you come back from that place?
Well, I think the first thing is sit with it. So if people are asking you, if we're asking people for feedback, sit with it and then think about first, don't think about, well, the reasons why we can't do it. Think about, well, how can we do it? And have we done it before? And how could we potentially do something differently? How can we get our team involved in this if it's something that they want to do as well? Like having a bit more of an open mind about where it's at and sitting with it and not responding straight away. If you're asking for feedback, just take it all in, write it down, and then loop back around. But after there's been either further conversations, further questions, and be curious. But don't just shut it down, because you're absolutely right. If you're going to the team and you're asking them and then you're just shutting down, the team's just going to get disengaged and go, well, I'm not going to contribute or participate in the surveys or the questions or anything, because you're not actually taking anything that I'm saying. You're not valuing what I'm saying. So I'm not going to say it anymore. And I've seen that happen a lot, where teams just stop engaging or participating. And then you'll see your participation rates of your survey drop. And that's would be one reason why. Or another reason is because the teams, like, they're giving feedback and nothing gets done about it. So it just gets lost, and then there's no results done about it.
What would you say are some of the main contributors that would cause someone to sort of start to disengage in their workplace?
I think the main contributor is that lack of purpose and clarity. It's a lot around, like, making sure that the teams understand what they do, but also from how what they do contributes to the broader scale of what the company's doing, so that they're part of that whole journey. And every person has, every position has a purpose, and it's like a clog in the wheel. And, you can't have businesses operating without, everyone needs to be in that team and everybody needs to be working together. So making sure that everybody's aligned in that perspective, and the vision and the values and the behaviours, the way in which we work, which all feeds into our culture. So that's part of creating your culture. And just leaders that listen and inspire your team. Like, if you're there as a leader, how are we, our impact, how are we impacting people? So I want to make sure that I'm getting rid of all the challenges for the team so that they can perform at their best. So, being open to that, and open for feedback.
Yeah. What would you say is a common misconception about the HR role and position in an organisation?
I find that the common misconception is around, well, HR just do like payroll, or HR just do contracts, or just do recruiting. And I guess it depends on what the business is, and there's a lot of functions within HR. But an effective, and particularly nowadays, having HR involved in those leadership conversations and involved from a strategic position, and working alongside, when I'm working alongside with the leaders, and particularly with like operations and accounting, the accounting team, like CFOs, everybody on the same page. And it's literally like when I do change management, it's getting everybody involved, and then how do we achieve our vision together? So HR within a business is there to support, and is to support the people as well. So we have the processes and we have our people. So how do we help the business to get from A to B to achieve the goals that we need to? And also to support leaders if we have team members that need support because they're not performing or the behaviours aren't aligned. So HR coming in to support leaders around how do we have these conversations, and having that chat with someone. And understanding when you go into a performance conversation, it's around, there's an issue. So how do we bring the person back up to the standard that we need them to be, and being mindful that there might be other things going on. So looking at process, and then looking at, well, are they okay? And just going in with some, clarity, kindness, and just being open-minded around where things are, and being curious, asking more questions. And I think that's the role that HR can play, to support leaders in sort of stepping into that way of working and that leadership mindset.
the performance management conversation, I think that's a really good one to sort of stick with for a moment, because, like, I guess when you're in that situation, and it might be a scheduled one, or it might be because a specific need has been identified that needs to be addressed. But I guess from the perspective of someone that's been called into a performance management conversation by their manager or their boss, how can they navigate themselves through that situation that can sort of work in their favour within their career, and have that become an enhancing moment for them rather than something that sort of continues on a negative trajectory for themselves?
Yeah. So when employees are engaged to have a conversation, a formal or an informal conversation about performance, always think of it as around, like, how can I take this as constructive feedback? Because the conversation, and if you're getting to a formal conversation, it's potentially because the managers tried to have some informal conversations, but they can't see any shift changing in the behaviour or performance. So when you're going into those conversations, I know that they're really difficult, and they're very stressful, and people don't sleep. So once you get given the 24 or 48 hours notice to have a formal conversation, people, they get anxious and they can't sleep. So knowing that, I would just make sure that you're, like, going out for a walk, like making sure your mind, your well-being's looked after. So that first, making sure that you're, hydrating your body, that type of thing, looking after your well-being. From your career perspective, think about the feedback that you're getting, and then think about, well, how, take it on as constructive feedback, and then have a think about, well, is there a reason why this has occurred, and share that, because this is an opportunity for you to provide your side of what has happened. Or, there might be you followed a process or you didn't follow a process, and there might be a reason why. I find that in conversations, people don't intentionally do things, or to make a mistake or anything like that, right? So it's around, well, how going in it with an open mind too, around there's an issue, I'm not meeting the standard, I need to be able to get to a particular standard. So taking on that feedback, and what can I do differently myself? I'm going to show up professionally. I'm going to listen, but I'm also going to, use my voice and share what's my perspective on what's happened. But then also think about, well, if this is something that my standard does need to increase and rise, what support do I need to do that? Because I'll always ask that to the employee too, and say, look, we're here to help you. We want you to succeed. So how, what are your ideas? What training do you need? What coaching do you need? What support do you need to help you to get to that piece? So if you go in with that mindset, you'll get a better result. Whereas if you go in with a mindset of your straight away, negativity and withdrawing, and, it's an opportunity to have a really good conversation around building yourself up and increasing your performance and behaviours. And I've seen people turn around, some people don't even realise. And it's just bringing things to the surface and working it out, and then progressing, like helping you to grow. So use it as that opportunity. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah. If hypothetically you're in a scenario where you feel the business is maybe trying to position themselves to be able to move you on unwarrantedly, what are some of the ways that someone could prepare in that instance if they're feeling like that is the case? Are there particular things that they can do to set themselves up? And particularly if they're in a position where they're not in a position to sort of move on and find an environment where they feel more accepted in. What are some ways that someone could prepare in that situation?
I think if you have a good relationship with your leader as well, and just raise those concerns, if you feel comfortable to do so, and just have that conversation. Some people may not feel comfortable to do that. The other advice is seeking external advice. So you could, outside of the team, so you could speak to HR if you've got a relationship with HR, or even like your next, some businesses will have like a contact officer or an EAP, so an employee assistance program that you'd be able to call and sort of get some advice and career advice as well. So there's sort of some avenues. And then if you're unsure about things, and it depends on a case-by-case basis, because if a business is going through or looking at redundancies or changing, a team or doing that sort of management perspective of managing someone out of a business, the first step is that they'll be trying to help you to stay in the business, because the amount of training and knowledge is so valuable. And then if you do need to exit an employee out, the cost to replace that employee and induct someone new and do that whole process is a lot. So there's that as well. So consider that. And then if you also need that additional support, you can reach out to Fair Work and sort of get some advice from a legal perspective with Fair Work or an external employment lawyer.
Yeah. So I often hear it come up around bosses in businesses feeling nervous about training up their staff further because they're worried that if they develop their team that they'll leave. What's your take on that? Is that something that you've seen and had to sort of talk people through?
Yes, a lot actually. And my question is always, well, what's the risk of if we don't develop them and then they stay? So, why don't we focus on developing, providing growth, and then why don't we focus on creating a culture within the workplace where our people want to stay and they want to grow, so they don't want to leave. So I guess, you're always going to have that managers will always have that thought if they're investing into people. But I always just think, well, what's the risk if you don't develop? And whether or not, with what they're currently doing, like they're just sort of staying the same, their skills aren't growing. So just sort of thinking about that piece. But then also think about, things change so quick. So skills need to be updated. Business grows, there's AI, so like getting training with AI, and there's all different things now. So it's really around, I would invest in, look at what the risk is if you don't do it, and then how can you actually retain your team? So create that culture where people want to stay, they want to win, they want to, the return on the investment is they're implementing the training that they're learning, and then they're training others with it as well. So it's a collaborative team and they're sharing the knowledge and they're learning together. And that would be part of your retention strategy.
It just highlights, doesn't it, how much of particularly when you're a manager, a boss in this scenario, just how everything that's happening within yourself impacts how you lead and manage people. Because when you think about that mentality of if I train them up, they'll leave. It's like who hurt you?
Yeah.
it's such a deep thing of it's like if you were talking that same way about a romantic relationship you're in, I don't want to invest into the relationship because they might leave. It's like that is a fear of being hurt or let down, or if you make yourself vulnerable that it's not going to be met and all these things. So there's deep things going on when you hear that, and leadership seems to bring that all out in ourselves, doesn't it?
It does. And the other thing is when you've got small businesses or if training budget's quite tight, and that is a worry for businesses. Like if a small business is investing money in, and they are a small business, they are going to have that worry around, well, what if the person does leave? And then some of the companies that I work with, we have a training policy and procedure, and we've implemented depending on how much and what the training is. So, for example, if it's a university degree and they're going to put someone through uni, then what we would do is, and there's different options depending on a policy and procedure that you wanted to put in. But as an example, one might be, well, the employee, you like enroll and then you pay your training, and then at the end of that training we'll reimburse you, whether that's 50%, 80%, 100%. So that might be a way as well to from a retention piece. And then I've got other clients that will do, we'll send somebody on a training course and then they'll have a return of an investment, like an agreement. So where you would then have, the first year you would, if the employee was to leave, then it would be 100% of the training fee. And then the second year might be 50% of that training fee. But then as well, on the other hand, it is around, well, then if you're locked into that and then the person's disengaged and they no longer work there, then they might just stay because they don't want to pay back their return on the investment, and then that then could cause other problems. So my first recommendation would be around that bigger risk. So the development and investing in your people, and then creating your culture so that people don't want to leave and that you're building them.
Yeah, you can't rely on any one aspect for that retention of staff. Like you want to set up good systems so that people are getting trained up, but you also want to be building a great culture, and you want to actually be taking on board and actioning feedback, not just asking for it. You're not just sort of ticking boxes. And like, yeah, particularly as a small business, like everything you do is a risk, right? It's like
it is, right? Yeah. But the business can't operate without a team. So if we're leading by example, and like I was saying at the beginning of our interview around being vulnerable and being a human, like if we're doing that as leaders, then it just allows that and opens it up for the employees to be able to be honest and, feel that same way as well, and really enjoy like that culture. If you're sitting within a team like that and it's open and transparent, and it's such better environment to be working in.
And so do you find that you get pulled more into smaller business space that don't necessarily have the capacity to have a fully dedicated HR person themselves?
Yeah, I do. So I support businesses up to either hiring their first employee, and then they need their foundational pieces sort of packaged up together, and basically up to 100, like 80 to 100 employees. And it might be training or compliance or help with performance, goal setting and things like that.
I'm just having a thought right now around like the onboarding process. How important is an onboarding process to the retention of someone? Like, is there anything that would show that if you do onboarding well, that you're going to be able to keep them set up for longer?
100%. 100%. So I always think when I'm developing any policy and procedure about myself walking in the person's shoes. So I set up an onboarding program with an organisation that I was working with, and the feedback that I used to get was, this is the best onboarding I've ever had. And the reason why it was because we set up pre-onboarding before they start, and then a process where you're checking in with the person before they're starting and calling them, and the manager's calling them. Also finding out a little bit about them, and then I ask them to write a bit of a bio so we can share it with the team so the team can get to know them. And I ask them questions as well, like, talk to me about, do you love to travel? Do you like sweet or savory? Just so that when they come on their first day, we can have like a coffee or treat or snacks or whatever sort of that it is that they like. So just to make them feel a bit special. And then having a process when they're onboarded. So when they're, showing up to work and you've got everything's flowing really well, they know who their buddy is, and then you show them around the office, and then you introduce them to the IT team. They get all their assets, the desk's set up, you've got your computer, you've got your logins, you get everything you need. You've got your schedule of everyone that you're going to be meeting with, who does what, your organisational chart so they can understand how the business works, and then all of your inductions. So having that, the company induction, what are our values and vision, and having all of that on the first day is really important to set the scene about what we're all about. And then those key people, like introducing them to the team, I really advocate for having a team lunch on the first day and just taking them off site. So it's a little bit of an informal way to people just to get to know each other a little bit better. But having that planned out, that first 90 days is really important, and having those check-ins, so that one-to-one check-in, and setting up your probationary meetings so that the employee has the opportunity to raise concerns as well and address things if they need things to be addressed. And remember that the employees also, do I want to work here? So they're also looking at it, they're assessing the business to see, well, is this, are they who they say they are? Is this what, is this somewhere where I want to work and invest my time to be? So remember that they're doing that to the business as well. So it's vice versa. It's both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly that calling beforehand. I had that in the role that I'm in now. I had my manager sort of reach out a couple of times in the lead up, just checking in, saying hi, seeing how things are going. I was going to be moving for the role as well and stuff. So, that was massive. Even though, like, it's just like these little things that can really make you feel like you're already a part of the team and you're sort of ready to hit the ground running when you actually have your first day. It would be interesting for the workplaces with really high turnover if you're trying to do the eat out lunch every time. Staff would either start to hate it or they'd really love it. They're like, oh, this is great.
Well, and I get that needs to be in their budgets too, right? But hopefully if there is a retention, like addressing some of that, because you want to, create a really great engaging workforce and place for people to be and want to come to work. And people to work absolutely. With. Like, we had COVID where we lost that connection and we were doing a lot of videos but it's so different when you're sitting in a room with people and the energy from people and, it's just such a difference.
Yeah. It is just so powerful. When I think about, this podcast is all about taking ownership of your career. But I'm always making the point that we don't build our career alone or in isolation. And I just think about it like when you're in an environment where you've got, particularly when you've got a really well-functioning team and like at least within the unit that you're in, there's a lot of trust and connection and communication, so that even if the overall organisation wasn't exactly perfect, when you at least got that sort of group of people that you can navigate it together with, it's just so powerful. And you often just think like when you're in a good situation and you got maybe a really good manager that you report to or the team that you're leading is really engaged and supports you and backs you, you often just think like, I don't know if I could do this anywhere else, because you just start to think it's just all about these people that I have with me that are taking me on this journey.
Absolutely. And people, one of the main reasons why people do leave is because of the way their leaders are or the team is. So another thing is for leaders around and for employees, like if an employee feels like that they, that there's something that's happening and they need to address something, like I would recommend address it, have a discussion with your leader around any concerns that you have, because the sooner that you do that, the sooner that it can be resolved and clarity can be sought. Because I see as well many times where employees, they don't raise things and they hold on to it. And then that just builds more frustration, it builds unclarity, like it just makes things unclear. And then also people then start to jump to assumptions which aren't particularly true or correct. But we do that, right? Our human brain does that. Our brain will look for information and then we'll process that based on the information that we have, which may not necessarily be have all the information or the full picture. So if you do feel frustrated with anything, then I would recommend raising it with your leader sooner rather than later, so that you're not holding on to it and you can move forward and move past it.
Kelly, thank you so much for coming on today. How can people connect with you, follow along and work with you?
Yes, so you can reach out to me. My email address is Kelly, so it's KELLY at rainhr.com.au. So that's REIGN. hr.com.au. I'm online as well, so you can find me on my website or you can find me on LinkedIn also.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thanks for tuning in to Kinda Planned. Subscribe and send this episode to a friend that you think needs to hear it. Or head to my website, www.kindaplan.com.au for free resources, or follow me on LinkedIn and socials so that we can keep the conversation going. Now go unlock your next opportunity.